everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. I'm your host, Terry. So today is June 9th, and I promised I would tell you a story. It's actually about my dad, but it's also about several other people, some of whose names you will recognize. So, my dad was born on this day in 1927. Fast forward a few years, World War II starts in 1939. Yeah, that's what I said, 1939. The U.S. doesn't get involved into the war until December 11th, I think, is when we actually declared war on the Axis powers. But December 7th is when the United States was attacked, the base at Pearl Harbor. On December 8th, I think that's the day that Roosevelt gives his day that will live in infamy speech. So anyway, my dad, he's born in 1927. In 1944, in June of 1944, he turned 17. He graduates from high school and he joins the Marine Corps, and with some friends, and they all go in the Marine Corps. And of course, you know, they all end up getting sent to the Pacific. However, my father, even though he was trained as a sniper, he went to sniper school at Quantico. I think that's where it was back then. He doesn't end up seeing any action because by the time he gets over to the Pacific on a ship, the war is pretty much over by, August of 45. So he ends up, hanging out in the Pacific for a little bit, and he fixes trucks and Jeeps that are broken down because they didn't really need a lot of infantrymen. And they put him on a ship coming back to the States, and he just fixes equipment that's broken as best he can, and on the way back. And he gets back to Treasure Island, San Francisco. Treasure Island was a naval base at the time. And then I don't know exactly how he got back home because he grew up in Hornell, New York. So anyway, that was his service, and I think he did 18 months or whatever, because his contract was, I think he said it was for the duration plus some period of time, like a year or 6 months or whatever. So he enlisted for the length of the war plus some period of time afterward. Anyway, he gets out and goes on with his life. But and he passed away, so he would be 94 this year, if my math is right. Wait, what am I saying? He would be 96 this year. But in his 80s, so this is back around 2001 maybe, I was in law school, and I don't know if I had just retired from the Navy or if I was, what exactly my status was, but I was in law school. And, I went to University of Maryland School of Law, and there were quite a few people there that either had been in the military recently or were still in the military, whether reserves, active duty. Like when I first started law school, I was on active duty. So, we all kind of congregated around, and there was quite a few guys there that had Naval Academy connections, and I also had a classmate who was a Naval Academy graduate, and she was a helicopter pilot, and she was an instructor at the academy. But anyway, so like I said, a lot of Navy connections, and I was friends with this guy, and I won't say his name, but he was a year behind me, but he's a Naval Academy grad and had done his time in the Navy and got out and went to law school. So it just so happens that he and I were talking one day, and he told me that his father-in-law was a really famous author. But he asked me not to reveal that to anybody else, like, you know, and just that's between him and I, right? So then, you know, at some point it got close to my dad's birthday, and this particular author had just put out a new book about the Marine Corps. And so I went to him and I said, hey, you could totally say no to me, but my father is a big fan of your father-in-law and of his books. I know because my dad would always read like any military books, any fiction, it didn't matter, right? He was just interested in the military and spent a lot of time reading and stuff, watching History Channel, you know, go figure, right? The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So anyway, this guy's totally gracious. He's like, yeah, he goes, write down what you want my father-in-law to say, and then stick it inside, and I'll have him do a nice inscription, sign the book and everything for your dad. And so I get the book back, you know, a week later, and I open it up, right? And it was awesome. It's like, you know, I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was very personalized. To Frank, is my dad's name, you know, appreciate your service, you know, Semper Fi, blah, 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 Tom Clancy. And it was a book that Tom Clancy had written about the Marine Corps. I think he wrote books about each branch of the service, but this was the one on the Marines. And my dad was a huge Tom Clancy fan. And if you don't know, Tom Clancy actually lived in Maryland. He lived down in southern Maryland, down towards Patuxent River Naval Air Station. But my friend was married to his daughter, and that's how I got that book for my dad. He was thrilled. And, you know, when Tom passed away, you know, I sent a note to my friend. I was like, hey, you know, I'm sorry for your loss. And I said, I can't tell you how much joy you and your father-in-law brought to my dad on his birthday. I mean, you know, the fact that I paid for the damn book didn't really matter. But my dad thought it was like super cool. And I thought it was very nice that my friend did that, got that done for me. And so that's my story about my dad's birthday. One of my stories. I could tell you another story, but maybe I'll save that for next year. So anyway, I still haven't forgotten about Paul and the guy from Werner that crunched his truck. But I got the video after I did my last video. I got 2 videos from Paul, and I'm going to show them to you. So this first one is the guy, I guess I'll call him inbound. But here's what's most bizarre about it. It's way worse than I thought. Take a look. Paul said there were 3 spots to the right of his truck. This guy comes in facing him, right? And you see where the trailer crunches the fender of Paul's truck. It wasn't like at the back where the guy like just misjudged it. It was like right towards the front. It was like practically sideswiped him with the tractor. But then Watch what he does. And keep in mind, this guy told his employer, and I don't know if the cops, caught up to him or whatever, but he told Werner that he didn't realize what was going on. But watch this, and you tell me if there's any way that you think that this guy didn't know he just crunched somebody else's truck. So hopefully this guy, we know all the Paul knows all the information about the guy, birth date, name. The guy was licensed in South Carolina. I don't think that's a commentary on South Carolina as much as it's a commentary on him. So hopefully by now he's returned whatever equipment he had to Werner, and they've already fired him. But anyway, yeah, that was, like I said, if you hit somebody, and there's zero doubt in my mind, this guy knew exactly what happened. And in fact, on the first video at the 20-second mark, because I watched it a few times and I cranked up the volume, at the 20-second mark, right after it's like crunch time, you hear somebody say, "What the fuck?" And it's either somebody outside the truck that Paul's thing picked up, or it's the driver of the truck. Somebody, but clearly, immediately, somebody knew what was going on. Okay, so let's talk about a couple other, trucking related things. I was just in Washington State. Starting July 23rd, the governor of Washington signed legislation, or as I like to call it, a governmental mandate, that shippers and receivers have bathrooms for drivers. Now, I was at a ship receiver in Washington. I was actually at two of them the other day. One of them just had a porta-john. It was nice though, I will say that. It was clean. And I don't think that would pass muster, a porta-john. I read the law. I don't think a porta-john just in the middle of a parking lot is going to cut it. However, I was at another location. Actually, this was in Oregon. It was at the Albertsons / Safeway in Portland distribution center. They had pretty nice bathroom trailers. Now, I think, because they had sinks and they were heated, you could tell they had ventilation. They were nice. Privacy, lighted. So I think that would probably pass muster in Washington State. But I hope there is federal legislation. I've talked about that before. Hopefully, more states just get this done even without waiting for Congress to act, because Congress is, this is not going to. The irony is that there are probably about 30 states where the largest job, and how do I want to say this? The number one job title for citizens of those states is truck driver. Now that could be anything from, delivering FedEx packages to houses, or what we do, or anything. But nevertheless, it's truck driver. And it's in a lot of states, a lot of big states. Texas, Pennsylvania, Michigan. All these states, truck driver is the number one job, And in a lot of the other states, it's actually like home health aid or like CNA at a nursing home. But so you'd think with all these truck drivers that members of Congress would be like falling all over themselves to just do something for truck drivers, right? And it's easy. It's just saying to companies, hey, let them use your bathrooms. And it's not, it's not like companies are going to have to like build bathrooms. They already have them, right? They already have them in the building. They just don't want to let truck drivers use them. And don't get me wrong, a lot of truck drivers are scumbags, right? We all know that. But, it's like anything else, right? Just, like when I was a volunteer firefighter and somebody got in a car wreck, I would go to the car wreck on the fire engine or on the fire truck, right? I didn't ask if they were a shitty driver, because a lot of times they were. A lot of times they were doing stupid stuff and they got in a bad wreck. And we still went and helped them. And I kind of feel like it's the same thing with truck drivers. Yeah, there are truck drivers that are scumbags. But, I think most of us aren't, and most of us have some modicum of respect for public facilities. I know that when I go in, even when I go in like Porta-Johns, like I did the other day at this one receiver in Washington, I bring my wipes in, I clean the whole thing up, both for myself, but for everybody else. I wipe down the toilets, like the lid, the seat, the rim, all around, right? And so I feel like most drivers just want a clean place to use the bathroom. And, it's just, my son and I were talking about it, and we were talking about, places that won't let you use the bathroom. And I'll admit, if there's a place that has no bathrooms, but I'm sitting there for hours, I'll pee on their parking lot. I don't give a crap, because my opinion is, you treat me like a dog, I'll behave like a dog, right? If you don't want to treat me like a human being who's there with a purpose, then sorry. I don't care if your parking lot smells like urine. It's not my problem, right? It's, because I know there's a bathroom in that building. I know there is. In fact, you wouldn't even have to tell me where it was. I bet I could find it by myself if you let me in there. So anyway, that's a big issue. To me, at least, it's a human right. I don't want to sound like crazy, but I feel like it's a basic human right to be able to use the bathroom. And it really bugs me when our female colleagues don't have a place to go. Guys have outdoor plumbing, and look, I was in the military, I was, I was a Boy Scout, I don't really care. Like, I'll just whip it out. But, I really do feel for our female colleagues. I've had some women on the truck, 2 women that were with me long term. On, some occasions they went outside. Like one time we were stuck in traffic on Cajon Pass, and I had pulled over to the shoulder to use the bathroom, and my colleague had to do the same. Another time, one of my other colleagues, I tried to find a bathroom. Like, I was like, yeah, let me get off on this exit. Couldn't find anything. So I just found a place to stop. It happens. But when you're at a building, you shouldn't have to beg to do a basic human function, right? So anyway, enough about that. So I had somebody mention, because I mentioned unions, and by the way, I don't know where, well, I actually do know where the idea came from, that unions are like somehow bad for the country. And, I know where the idea came from. It came from Republican politicians, and, it's very easily documentable, right? But here's the thing about unions, and I've never been in a union, by the way. I've never been in the union. But I see the need and the benefit of unions, because if you look at the United States economy, if you look at the zenith the high point of union membership, there is a very strong correlation with the high point of union membership and the quality of life of the middle class, of blue collar workers, skilled workers, and their ability to purchase stuff, their wage growth, and also the delta between the highest paid people at a company and the worker bees, right? Like now we have worker bees making like in some cases 1/500th of what the CEO makes. Whereas at the height of union membership in this country, it was more like 1/15th of what the CEO made. And people would line up for union jobs, right? Like people would be like, yeah, because I talk to people that are a little bit older than me. My dad worked at this plant. It was a really good job. And, when I got out of high school, I was in the Army for 4 years. I came home. I worked a few jobs until my dad got me in at the plant. And I stayed for 40 years, And the thing is, right, like right now, the Teamsters are in negotiations with really two companies. They just reached a contract with ABF, but they're putting a strike at UPS to a vote, and they're still negotiating with Yellow. But here's the thing. I really do think that the strike vote is kind of posturing. It's kind of like part of the process, if you will. But I think that whatever they got at ABF, UPS is gonna have to at least match what ABF is giving their workers, and so is Yellow. And there's a kind of a precedent for that. It's called pattern bargaining. Now, not every company participates in it, but I'll tell you a story about John Deere and Caterpillar. So what happened was and I can't remember who went first, but whoever it was, maybe Caterpillar went first, and then there was negotiations with John Deere's union, and the union wanted to say, well, you got to give us the same deal as we got at Cat, because Cat's the same kind of company. And John Deere was like, no, we are a primarily agricultural equipment. Cat is primarily construction equipment and power plants, meaning diesel engines. And this is when Cat still made diesel engines for trucks, and of course they make all sorts of diesel generators and stuff like that. So John Deere's position was, we're not the same kind of company. But that's the idea of pattern bargaining with unions. So I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, honestly, if the Teamsters struck UPS, I don't think that's a bad thing for me. And the reason I say that is this: prime hauls, and I don't know if anybody's still doing this because of the way loads have been in the economy, but I've hauled a fair number of loads for FedEx when I'm teaming with somebody, when I have a trainee. The interesting thing, though, is that when a company as big as UPS, and they are the biggest, they're the biggest trucking company in America. They're also the oldest, by the way. They've been around since over 100 years. But anyway, if the Teamsters struck UPS, right? UPS basically handles dry cargo, packages, stuff like that, which we did for FedEx too. But I personally wouldn't cross a picket line to go pick up a load at UPS, but it wouldn't, but I wouldn't have an issue if somebody else said, well, I'm trying to make a buck, so I'm going to go get that UPS load, and I'm going to drive through the picket line or whatever. And sometimes that could be dangerous, right? But the thing is if there were people crossing those picket lines, and they would not meet the definition of scabs, because they would just be outside contractors. They wouldn't be taking the place of those union workers. So that's not a scab situation, but it could be construed as crossing a picket line. That would still benefit me, I think, because if there are more people grabbing, let's say, UPS loads that, you know, that otherwise might be taking some loads, especially dry loads that Prime moves, could be beneficial. I don't really think there's going to be a strike, because whenever there is, it takes a company a long time to recover from it. That said, I do not believe that the government would intervene the way they did with the railroads. There's a huge difference between even the largest trucking company and like Union Pacific or BNSF or CSX or whatever. So anyway, that's some of the things that are going on. Another thing though that's going on is Tyson Foods has been laying some people off. Now, they closed 2 plants, right? One in Arkansas and one in, I want to say Virginia. But that doesn't mean that they aren't going to be shipping as much as they ever did. They were just kind of consolidating. But the most recent layoffs are actually all like administrative people and stuff. That doesn't mean that Tyson's in trouble or they're going to be doing less business. That actually helps. I know it's counterintuitive, but when companies lay people off, big companies lay people off, it often helps their stock price. And if it helps their bottom line, you know, that's a good thing because they're a big customer of Prime, and you know, the health of our customers is the health of our company. And I don't care what trucking company you're with, whether it's if you're at Stevens, if you're at Hirschbach, you know, if you do refrigerated stuff, temp control, your customer's financial health is your financial health. So anyway, this is not, I'm not really embarrassed about this because I didn't, this is my final vignette for today. I'm not embarrassed about this because I didn't really mismanage my clock. I didn't really have a choice. So what's going on is that I'm supposed to be on starting home time on Monday, but there's a very real possibility that I will not be able to get home because my 70-hour clock is so depleted. I have right around 600 miles that I need to run tomorrow, and I have 10 hours and 48 minutes to do it. Now, I'm pretty confident that I'll be able to get it done because, believe it or not, the Peterbilt here seems to actually go 65. In fact, sometimes on the speedometer it says 66, and I actually had a thing pop up where it tells you your speed, you know, like going in a construction zone, and when I said 66 on the dash, it said 66 on the sign. So I got a little bit more speed than I had in my Freightliner. I'm gonna get up early, probably around 5:30, which is as early as I can leave. Get on the road, and I'm in, this is the Alda exit. So I'm just a little bit west of Grand Island, like one exit west of Grand Island, Nebraska on I-80. It was pouring down rain, and I was like, you know what, I've gone, like I went, how far did I go today? 625 miles. I'm like, that's a good day's work. I had another hour, but it's okay. You know, yeah, I had another hour and 6 minutes, and so I rolled up some mileage today. So anyway, I'm pleased with that, but I'm gonna get this delivery made with like 30 minutes left on my 70, but I don't start recapping until Monday, but I want to be home Monday. And I'm delivering, you know, in Wilmington, Illinois, so just south of Joliet. So my issue is, I think, I gotta talk to my wife, but I think I'm just gonna fly home. I think I'm gonna drop that load, take the trailer and my truck over to the Manuka terminal, drop the trailer, and then we have a drop yard not too far from Midway Airport, so I may just bobtail down there, park there, take a flight out of Midway back to the DC area, or back to BWI. otherwise, if I mean, I'm not afraid to use PC, but even if I use PC to go all the way home, I can't get it done in one fell swoop, because even if I'm using PC, I have to, after I've driven, you know, like 11 hours, I would have to take a 10-hour break. You still have to have the mandated rest period, even if you're PC in a long distance. So, yeah, I think it might be easier to just park the truck, catch a plane home, and then, I don't know, I'll come back a week later, either, you know, I don't know if I'll take the train or if I'll fly back, or, you know, I might even take the Flixbus. And my wife was like, you can't take a bus? I'm like, yeah, that's how you meet interesting people. Well, I'm Tim Travels, right? I can meet interesting people on a bus ride from DC to Chicago, man. That would be, I could stay up all night just shooting the bull with somebody. So anyway, wish me luck. Wish me luck. I'll get this delivery made on time, and that's all that matters. Oh, but the reason my clock was so depleted is because I did get a 34 when I was in Grand Island last weekend, because I was waiting for a load at JBS. But then I had to like super hustle to get those 3 deliveries made in Washington, the 2 in Washington and the 1 in Portland. And then as soon as I could, I started heading back, picked this load up in Idaho. But yeah, I had several days where I was like 10 plus hours of driving. So it is what it is. But I'll figure out something, and we'll go from there. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. And I appreciate everybody, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.